Hallo zusammen! In this video I continue analyzing, dissecting Arnold Schwarzenegger's way of speaking German, Austrian German that is, a specific type of Austrian German dialect even, and what is different compared to Germany German, meaning Standard German, and where you can actually hear a few English influences in his way of pronouncing things and expressing stuff. So yeah, without further ado, let's go back in.
Und in die 2 Jahre habe ich 2 Mr. Universum-Titel gewonnen.
In den 2 Jahren habe ich 2 Mr. Universum-Titel gewonnen. That would be sort of the standard German way of saying that. Here, he basically made a grammatical mistake. In die 2 Jahre.
In die 2 Jahre.
During those 2 years. So he would have to use the dative form. In den 2 Jahren. He said in die 2 Jahre, which to me appears to be typical for people that have a non-German or an English way of speaking in their mind when they formulate German sentences. This doesn't have anything to do with Germany German or Austrian German or any other type of German. It's just that I guess he is so used to speaking English. In German, you have to use the right case, and that comes along with a different type of article.
Und in die 2 Jahre habe ich 2 Mr. Universum-Titel gewonnen.
He said Titeln. He basically added an extra N at the end. That's just a wrong form of shaping the plural form of Titel in German in this case.
München war die beste Stadt für das Training, das beste Essen.
What really fascinates me about the way he expresses this whole phrase, the sentence, is even though he's so familiar with speaking English on a daily basis these days, he still pronounced the Anglicism Training in a very German-ish way.
München war die beste Stadt für das Training.
Training, not training. That's sort of interesting. I like that.
München war die beste Stadt für das Training, das beste Essen.
München war die beste Stadt für das Training, das beste Essen. He stressed that aspect of Essen, to eat, or food in this case, you know, dishes, cuisine, by overemphasizing the E at the start of the noun das Essen.
Das beste Essen.
Like a very, very forward E type of sound, which is not common when you would usually say that word out loud. That is interesting, but I guess here he did that to highlight that aspect of what he wanted to deliver in terms of the content and what he likes about Munich as a city. Pay attention to his fingers.
Und in die 2 Jahre habe ich 2 Mr. Universum.
I noticed that he basically showed the number 2 in a very American way. Inglourious Basterds reference incoming here, because I already made a video about that scene, the way of showing numbers in different languages and cultures. Watch that video in the end card, feel free to do so. Of course, you can't really generalize it because different people show and indicate numbers in a different way, but generally speaking, culturally speaking, it's not really common to do it that way in Germany and neither in Austria, I don't think. We would actually show it like this. Zwei. Eins, zwei. And not like this.
Ich habe immer ganz schöne und herrliche Gedanken über München.
Maybe a little detail, as far as I know, this is rather typical for his Steirisch dialect. He didn't say schöne with an Ö, he basically sort of added an E sound at the end. He gave it a little twang once again.
Ganz schöne.
Schöne. In Germany German, you wouldn't say that. You would say schöne.
Ohne München wäre es vielleicht gar nicht gelungen.
I like the phrasing of this. Ohne München wäre es vielleicht gar nicht gelungen. Gar instead of gar, net instead of nicht, and gelungen. Gelungen.
Ohne München wäre es vielleicht gar nicht gelungen, diese Karriere. Also München war sehr wichtig und deswegen liebe ich Deutschland.
So München war immer sehr wichtig. So München war immer sehr wichtig. The first term in this phrase that I would like to highlight is the first term in the phrase. He used so, but he used the English so in terms of the meaning. Why do I mention this? There is a difference between the German so and the English so. The English so at the start of sentences, like this one, would equal the German also, not to be confused with also in English again. So instead of saying, so München war immer sehr wichtig.
So München war sehr wichtig.
In German, you would say, also München war immer sehr wichtig. You would say also instead of so. And once again, we heard the slightly sharp S at the start of sehr.
So München war sehr wichtig.
Once again, in Germany German, you would use the soft S, sehr, z, sehr wichtig. And also what's quite common for Austrian German is the ik ending, the ik pronunciation of the suffix ig at the end of wichtig, for instance, wichtig.
So München war sehr wichtig.
In Germany, Standard German, you can either say wichtig, like ich, wichtig, or similar to the Austrian way of saying this, wichtig. Both ways of saying this are correct. In my region, which is the Sauerland, we would say wichtig. So we would use the form, which is more common in, I guess, northern Germany compared to southern Germany. We'd rather say wichtig.
So München war sehr wichtig und deswegen liebe ich Deutschland. So danke vielmals.
Okay, at the end of this little analysis video, he is giving us a little highlight because he used a Germenglish phrase, but you still get what he wants to say, of course.
So danke vielmals.
So Danke vielmoals, Danke, which is a combination of the English thanks or thank you and the German Danke, which is the German equivalent of thank you. Danke. It's very creative, Arnold. I give you that. And of course, you know what I mentioned a few times, but just to point it out one more time, he said vielmoals.
So danke vielmals.
So it's not vielmals, which is the way you would say it in Germany German, but it's vielmoals in his Austrian dialect. Like I said, I'm not an expert, a total expert when it comes to Austrian German, of course. I tried my very best. Share your thoughts on his Austrian German. Maybe if you are Austrian, feel free to tell me what you picked up on, what is very specific to his Austrian dialect from the Steiermark compared to standard Austrian German. So if you can enlighten me and us in the comments about certain differences there, much appreciated, of course. Either way,
danke vielmals
for watching, whether you are American, Austrian, German, or from any other place in the world. Thank you very much. I highly appreciate that. And of course, also the support of the channel, whether it's by liking and sharing the video with others. That always helps a whole lot, of course. I really, really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.